Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2012 sci-fi action film, Lockout. Now, this is actually a film that I saw in the theater when it came out, and I remember being underwhelmed by it. I thought it was disappointing and a letdown, and it still is. This is not very good. Now, I will admit that I've seen worse, but that's not really saying much. Just because this gets over a pretty low bar, that doesn't mean it deserves a ton of credit. Although there are some things about it that I actually like. And that's what makes it so frustrating, is because I think the concept of it, which is a take on Escape from New York, but inside of a space prison, is actually a concept that's fun. And I also really like Guy Pearce in this. I like his performance and I like the character that he plays in Snow. I just wish he was in a much better movie. And before I go any further sharing my thoughts on Lockout, I want to give a special shout out to Steven for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Lockout is directed by two first-time filmmakers in Stephen St. Leger and James Mather. Now, prior to this, they did a short film, but they never really directed a feature film. And when you watch this movie, you can kind of see that. This looks very much like a low-budget independent movie that would go direct to streaming and not have a theatrical release. That being said, the direction is not an entirely terrible thing. Like, the direction is not a dumpster fire by any means. It's just okay. And it doesn't elevate a lot of the weaker elements of the movie, whether it's the visuals or it's the action. Because this is an action film, but the action is pretty tame and pretty lame and really not that thrilling or exciting most of the time. And seems to be very understated instead of over the top and fun. Somebody like Navadine and Taylor, like that would have been really cool to see them direct a film like this. They would have really done a much better job with this concept and this overall film and with $20 million than these two first-time filmmakers who are just trying to give their best first shot at things. And like I said, the direction is not terrible. It's just at best competent. It's all right in terms of the framing or the shot selection or the way they utilize the camera in terms of camera angles or pans or zooms or different sort of things involving the camera work. It's not a film that's going to blow you away or mesmerize you or wow you with its visuals or with its overall direction. But there really weren't a lot of moments though where I could point at the direction and be like, "Oh, that was bad," or that was particularly egregious. No, a lot of it was just very serviceable, kind of forgettable, very safe. There wasn't really a lot involving quick cuts or shaky cam or anything during the action, which I did appreciate. So it's not like it's that kind of thing. So it's not like it's janky in terms of the way that the direction is utilized or set up throughout the movie. It's just so-so. It's a so-so job by these two. And you can definitely see why they weren't really hired again to do another movie. Probably didn't help that this movie like bombed. It was only like ninth in the box office when it came out in the United States. And it barely made a profit, probably only mainly due to the overseas gross. So it's not like their direction was a part of a movie that was a surprise hit. Now, One of the directors, though, Steven St. Leger, he went on to direct Vikings and other television shows like that. So he had a bit of a career resurgence after this. Nothing for a theatrical release or a film, but at least he had a pretty steady career. Can't really say the same for the other director, James Mather. He just went back to doing DP work, didn't really direct a feature film again. Now, the screenplay by Steven St. Leger, James Mather, and Luc Besson, based on a story by Luc Besson. This script, for the most part, it's pretty sucky. It's a pretty bad script. It takes a fun concept, which is a take on Escape from New York that takes place in a space prison with a fun, witty, charismatic protagonist who, in a lot of ways, is kind of a throwback to the action heroes from the 80s and 90s with his quips and his one liners and his overall attitude. And you're thinking, okay, it opens up in kind of a fun way where Snow is being interrogated by this guy, and Snow is giving him shit and talking about how, he was trampling in his wife earlier, and he's got this really genuinely funny wit about him in terms of his retorts. And you're like, okay, all right, this could be fun. And then you get to the first major action sequence, and then you're like, okay, there's something off here. Because there's like this action sequence, which is a flashback that happened prior to the events of the interrogation that involves Snow. He's being chased by these people, and he's got a briefcase, and his colleague and mentor gets shot and killed. And right away, the script is starting to turn sour here because I guess this is a character that was really important to Snow, but we know nothing about him, and there was no depth to this character whatsoever, and he dies, and there's no reason to give a shit. And then Snow is he's on the run after that because there are some more agents that show up and try to take him out, but he escapes, jumps out a window, and the way that he slams into a window and slides down, the way that they set it up, it looks like something out of a cartoon. Like you expect to hear the window slide effect, and his see up close of his face smacked against the window, and it goes like you're expecting to see that. That's not a good tone to start with. And then you get the motorbike sequence, which features some of the most abysmal and abhorrent CGI I have ever seen in the theater since Mortal Kombat Annihilation. The CGI in this would be bad even for a Dreamcast or GameCube game. Like, it's the CGI in this sequence is unconvincing as hell and laughable. Especially when you combine really piss poor green screen on top of it. So like, oh god, okay, oh great, here we go. Then you have the writing that leads to the convicts escaping from this prison. And it is some of the dumbest shit that I have honestly seen in a while. Like, I completely forgot how stupid this script was. So, you have the president's daughter who decides to go to this maximum security prison that's floating in space, that hasn't had any incidents, and is supposedly perfect. Whenever you hear anything like that, something is going to go down. And of course, something does go down, but it goes down in the dumbest way possible. So the president's daughter is doing some PR campaign Her name is Emily, and she's going to this prison, and she's going to interview or speak to a prisoner. And she comes in with her Secret Service guy, and the Secret Service guy is able to walk right into a maximum security space prison with a loaded firearm, and it's not taken away from him at the security desk. He's just able to walk right in with a loaded firearm. He's in the room with Emily. They're doing the interview with this prisoner. The prisoner somehow escapes from his shackles, or he wasn't even handcuffed. This script is so dumb, I'm pretty sure he probably wasn't even handcuffed at all. And he just grabs the gun from the Secret Service agent, shoots Emily in the leg, and then starts releasing all the prisoners. I'm like, that's how that happened? That's how all the prisoners got out of stasis? Is because this one prisoner was able to get a gun that should have never been there to begin with? Oh, oh boy. This is shit. And then Snow, he's set up by this guy who the same guy was interrogating him in the beginning. This character named Langrel. And you're thinking, okay, what's going on with Snow? Oh, he's being sentenced to the same prison, but he ultimately isn't sent there. And then he is ultimately sent to the prison, but without being put into stasis. He's just sent there to try to rescue the president's daughter. And Langrel tries some other thing to try to get her out that fails spectacularly. And now it's up to him to rescue her. And you would think for a film like this that has a space prison with like 500 different prisoners, there would be a lot of action. There would be a high body count. There really isn't much. There's like one guy who gets his head blown up with a bomb around his neck, which reminded me of a much better movie in Fortress with Christopher Lambert. Or there's another sequence where Snow was trying to get to Emily and the Secret Service guy who escaped and are holed away in a room. And he's trying to get there within a certain amount of time because they're slowly dying because for whatever reason the room has a nitrogen tank in it. So when the Secret Service agents shot the lock to get it to lock so the prisoners couldn't get into the room, it activated something that released nitrogen into the room. So now they're dying of nitrogen poisoning. And so now it's up to Snow to try to get in there and save the girl, save the president's daughter, Emily. In order to get in there, he has to take a different route. So he has to go into this room with a bunch of big fans, which reminds me of Daylight with Stallone. There's a lot of stuff that this just reminds me of other movies that are like so much better that I'd rather be watching than Lockout. Fortress, Escape from New York, uh, Daylight, Demolition Man, because the prison freezes the prisoners in stasis, like in Demolition Man. And so you have this fan scene, and it's nothing. Snow fights this prisoner for like a minute and easily dispatches him, and then he falls in between the fans. And then I think they're gravity fans, so that enables him to like float up and get into this crawl space, and then wind up into the other room and revives the president's daughter. He does this thing where he puts her in a disguise, colors her hair, and cuts it, and gives her a hat and a convict uniform, and it's utterly pointless because she doesn't look at all like a dude. And it's not even remotely believable. And she's only in the disguise for like one scene. So like what was even the point of that? He goes to this prison, this part of the prison where all like might as well be general population, and he's trying to find his friend because his friend knows where the suitcase was hidden that he gave his friend at the beginning of the movie. Apparently, it's a pretty important thing. All the while, there's also stuff going on with these hostages and these two villains who are your main bad guys, who I like to call the Scottish Taint Twins because they're a bunch of taints with Scottish accents. And the one guy is so bad. I can't. Heidel is his name. He's the brother of Alex, who is supposedly the main villain, but near the end of the movie, Alex just gets killed by his crazy brother Heidel, and then Heidel is then the main bad guy. But this is after Heidel already killed all the hostages because he's a dumbass. And speaking of Heidel, I hated this character because this character was trying way too hard to be goofy and over the top, and it was just really painful to watch, and he wasn't funny. And then on top of that, he had the actor who played him had the thickest Scottish accent, and it was so thick I couldn't understand what the fuck he was saying half the time. I almost wanted to turn on the subtitles, but I didn't because I was like, this movie doesn't deserve that extra mile, so fuck it, I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, it was that bad. His accent was so thick, I was like, what the fuck did you just say? You Scottish taint? And so you have these two guys who I guess are supposed to be the main villains, but they don't do dick. They I guess they kill one hostage. They do one other thing. They activate the sentry guns that defend the prison, that blow up some people who are trying to board the prison. They wind up asking for some sort of demands, but I don't even remember what the demands even were. It was like the demands were mentioned in a vague fashion, but then you never really got a clear answer of what the demands even were to begin with. That's how bad and how lazy this script is. These bad guys talk to the president of the United States and mention demands, but you never know what the fuck the demands even were. So the stakes feel incredibly low, and the writers, they try to up the stakes in the most unrealistic way possible. Now all of a sudden the space station is careening towards Earth in a matter of what seems like hours, just because it's no longer I guess controlled by by a technician. And speaking of technicians, there's a whole dumb bit where Alex keeps shooting technicians who are trying to get into the room that Emily is in because they're not doing it fast enough. He even says before that, like, spare me the talk about it's gonna take a while. Because if you're gonna tell me that, then you're dead already or whatever. And I'm like, what is even the point of any of that? He even shoots another technician. He could have had two technicians working on the door at the same time, but because of his stupidity, he only has one guy. Then he shoots that guy. And then there's another guy who I guess is the right one, apparently, who gets the door open, but of course it's already too late. There's a little bit where Alex, I guess, takes the girl and overpowers Snow in a brief little moment, but then Snow never gets back at him because Heido kills his brother Alex, and then he becomes the big bad. But that's after everything is already completely gone to shit. There are no hostages anymore. The president has been overruled by Langrel to attack the space station. So the space station is already under attack. It's already careening towards the Earth. And this is how the confrontation ends between Snow and Heidel. Snow just shows up and punches him in the face and knocks him out with one punch. That's it. That's it. He doesn't even defeat the Alex guy. He gets killed by his brother, and then Heidel just gets punched in the face. Not very satisfying. Not very good. And then Snow and Emily, they escape the prison in the spacesuits just before it crashes or gets blown up. I think it was before it got blown up because there was a bunch of fighters or something that showed up and dropped a bomb on there, and they jump out of there just in time, and it explodes behind them, and they survive re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. And then you find out a twist that the guy that Snow thought was his friend that was helping him out throughout this entire mission, Shaw, he's actually the real bad guy. He was the real bad guy all along because it was all a double cross and he set everyone up, and he was trying to get Shaw to get the briefcase for him. And Shaw got the briefcase thanks to the help of Emily because she was able to decipher whatever gibberish was coming out of his friend's Mace's mouth after he woke up from cryostasis. And she found the suitcase. But apparently the suitcase was empty, or she gave the suitcase to her father and he took whatever was in the suitcase out and then gave Snow an empty suitcase. But then the real secrets were in a lighter that Snow's friend and colleague gave him earlier. So I'm like, what? So the suitcase was utterly pointless then. So the whole suitcase thing was useless. Unless it was just a way to weed out Shaw. Okay. Still not really worth the wild goose chase, if you ask me. You've got weak villains who don't even feel like a threat, who don't even feel like main prime antagonists. They just feel like random members of a gang. I guess the Scottish Mafia is real. I guess John Leguizamo wasn't that far off in the past. And you have that. You have lame, forgettable action sequences. You have some really bad CGI points. You don't really have that much of a body count, at least what happens on screen, despite there being 500 prisoners that can get shot or and killed or taken out in various different ways. You've got a kind of a bit of a charming love story and bit of back and forth between Emily and Snow that is honestly entertaining. That's another thing that I wish was a part of a much better movie, because the way that their dynamic is written is actually fun. There's even a bit at the end where Snow reveals Snow's first name and it's Marion, which kind of reminded me a bit of Cobra, and she busts his balls over that. And you're just thinking, okay, this could be fun. Why is this boring? Why is this not fun? It's because they don't do that much with the premise. There's a lot of scenes where not a lot happens. The villains suck. In these kind of movies, you need strong villains. You don't get that with Lockout. So you have a strong protagonist in Snow. You have a decent side character in Emily. But then everybody else sucks or doesn't leave that much of an impression, including Langrel or Shaw. And yeah, like I said, the stakes don't really feel that high either. It's like, oh, the president's daughter. Like, what makes her so important? Like, what secrets does she have? Nothing. Then the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one in this instance. I appreciate that they, didn't try to do some sequel bait bullshit for a movie that was never going to get a sequel. I appreciate that, but doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't make it good. The script sucks. I don't know what this guy is smoking. Edward Douglas of Coming Soon. Die Hard meets Blade Runner? I wish that this was Die Hard meets Blade Runner. It's not. It's not at all. So yeah, the script is pretty woeful and weak, and definitely one of the worst aspects of the movie. And John Carpenter had every right to sue the writers of this for plagiarism. Now, the cast, the two leads are good. Guy Pearce is a blast as Marion Snow. It's honestly one of my favorite roles of his. He's a lot of fun to watch in this. He's charming, he's charismatic, he's got a great deadpan. He's believable when it comes to the sequences when he needs to be a tough guy, bit of a badass. I liked him a lot in this. That's what makes it so disappointing because I like this character and I like this performance, and he's just trapped in this a D grade movie that should go direct to Tubi. Maggie Grace, not too bad either. Kind of a bit rough at the start, but once she starts interacting with Guy Pearce, she does a good job. She's got some good chemistry with him. I bought it when it comes to her being a little bit more resilient, and she could definitely, dish out some insults in an equally effective way as Guy Pearce. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent performance by her. Uh, Joe Gilgun and Vincent Regan as Heidel and Alex, the Scottish Taint twins, terrible. I don't. I mean, Vincent Regan, he was like the captain in 300. He was way better than that than in this. They were both about as appealing and as great as a rancid plate of haggis. Just terrible performances by the both of them, especially by Joe Gilgun as Heidel. Awful performance. Just absolutely fucking atrocious. Lennie James wasn't much better as Harry Shaw, the corrupt officer. Peter Stormare's just taking a paycheck as Langrel. And then everyone else who had like little bit parts and had like a few lines of dialogue, like people who worked for Langrel or people who were going to the prison to try to, do some hostage negotiation. Some of the worst acting I've ever seen in a film when it comes to side characters that ultimately got a theatrical release. This is like acting that's the level of real people who are trying to do the reenactments and unsolved mysteries. Like that kind of level of bad acting. It's kind of charming and acceptable in unsolved mysteries, but in this instance, it's anything but. It's distracting because you're like, "Oh my god, who the fuck hired these people? They cannot act at all." So yeah, the cast, other than the first two, main names, the big names that you see on the poster, the cast is a letdown too. The cinematography by James Mather, it's meh. The editing by Camille Delamare and Eamon Power, it's not the most powerful editing. It's not the strongest editing, but it's so-so. The music by Alexandre Azaria, this score sucked ass. This score was so bad. And it was also repetitive. It was the same generic score repeated over and over and over and over again. It was headache inducing. It's like, why am I hearing this refrain again? It wasn't great the first time. Why am I hearing it for what feels like the 50th time? So yeah, it's a film that there are worse ways to spend 90 minutes, but this was still awful. This was still not good. And the unrated version doesn't make it any better. It's a little bit more violent, but not by much. One guy gets shot in the mouth. It's a little bit more graphic than the theatrical version. And so is the guy who gets his head blown off. And I think maybe a couple other bits. But it's not like the unrated version's like full of practical gore or blood or higher body count or anything of that sort. It's still the same lame movie, but it's just a little bit more violent. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on Lockout. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.